Okay, so this is my garage. It used to have a car in it, but as you can see, it's got increasingly full of detritus from my family, and in fact I've been storing some chairs for a friend of mine. So, but you can still have a look at. There are some tools in here which aren't mine. I mean, here's a welding set here which I simply can't use. I think that's one thing that a blind person would struggle to do. I think is to weld, and I suspect you'll probably find there are blind people who can weld. This is an old family welder. My daughter, my 22-year-old daughter, is actually quite a cunning welder, which is rather nice. And so I'm lucky. I've been growing my tools for years. I've always amassed a collection of tools. If you want to have a look here, here's a chainsaw, which it's an electric chainsaw. Most people have a freakish idea about how I should use a chainsaw, and it's really not that big a deal. Here's I have a bench saw, which is not rocket science at all in terms of its usage. I mean, it's what we call a cheap and nasty saw, you could say. It's a hobby craft, so it's a hobby saw really, but it's sufficient to actually make some rather cunning things, and I'll show you later. I can show you some of the things that I've made on here. And I've had this now for 19 years, and it's paid for itself 1,000,000 times over. I'm on my 4th blade already, which gives you an idea of how often how well I've been using this thing. And so I think in any workshop, a primary thing is a work table, and it's got to be a certain height. It can't be too low, it can't be too high. And I built this really, came out of an old kitchen cupboard, and I've sort of built it up. I also made it enormously strong. So I actually bolted it to the wall. In fact, the bolts go clean through the wall. And of course, the next important thing is a vise. And so this is a very nice woodwork vise. It's a newish vise that I got in the last year. It's very nice because it actually opens with a clutch, which is powerful. It's very nice to have. But what is also important is that you don't only have a woodwork vise, is that I have a metalwork vise, which I now can use for metalwork or for smaller woodwork things that I can use. So using the one vise to hold the other vise, and I thought it was rather a cunning idea, which has certainly helped me. In fact, you couldn't do work without a vise. And then there's the tools. Many of my tools are older. Some of the tools come from my father. Some of those old G-clamps come from my father. My crosscut saw is an old crosscut saw which my dad used in his apprenticeship in 1948. And I'm very proud of it because it's still a beautiful old saw. I have it sharpened every couple of years. Then many of these tools were given to me as my 21st present. All these old marples chisels. If you hold these against a brand new marples chisel, it's about 1.5 inches shorter. And what that proves is that it's been used. So I have this sharpened. I can sharpen it to an extent. So during the year I'll sharpen it, and then at the end of a year I have a sort of ritual thing, and I take it to the blade doctor. But you can see how short that is. And if I could only show you, I don't have a newer chisel, but this chisel is now 30 years old. And as I say, it's 1.5 inches shorter than a conventional chisel, simply because it's been used. So I'm rather good with a chisel. I can do some rather neat mortising, and I love using a chisel. When I was a little more sighted, I actually could do a bit of sculpture after a fashion. Rather rough sculpture. I can show you one just now, but the chisels were invaluable for that. And then there's power tools, apart from the saw. I have my drill press, about 20 years old now, a little more in fact, about 21 years old, which I've been using. Also paid for itself 1,000,000 times over. Really useful thing, particularly for metalwork when you can gear it down. You can't gear a conventional drill down easily, and so for metalwork it's vital that you gear it down. Naturally one needs a decent set of drills, so I've got some top tier there are all wood bits. You'll see they've got a little needle. You see a wood bit has a needle on the end, so that you push it into the wood and it doesn't drift. It also means that if you want to mark a hole, you need to make a hole, and then the needle goes into it, so it's less estimation. So a wood bit is very accurate. And there's masonry bits, which obviously go into concrete and brick. And then there are some spade bits. A spade bit is a a very useful machine if you want to drill a larger hole. And then of course you are your metal bits. Metal bits are much sharper. They work perfectly well with wood, but they tend to drift if you're not accurate. And when you can't see, a wood bit is actually far easier to use. And then I've got a variety of electrical tools. This is a smaller battery-powered drill, which is perfect for driving screws in because you can put a bit on the end. But I use it a lot for drilling, especially smallest things. It's very light and small. When I need to, and there's a hefty job to be done, there's always the trusty old drill, corded drill. But interestingly, now that batteries have got so sophisticated, it's a lot easier to simply resort to a cordless drill. And then on my 50th, I treated myself to a very good quality cordless drill. This is a Makita, which is one of the better sort of domestic. This wouldn't shape up in any kind of artisan, but from a domestic point of view, there's nothing shabby about a Makita. And so this is a fine tool. I mean, it's got a hammer. I can go into concrete with it. I can use it with metalwork, and it comes with a wonderful array of little accessories, which is really nice. So, I mean, I've been saving up for years to get a decent cordless drill, and you've no idea how powerful it is to be able to climb up into the roof without having to worry about taking power with you and to fix something you need to fix in or install something. I had to build something for my daughter which went through her ceiling. It's a hammock chair, and I had to make quite a cunning arrangement, and I couldn't have done it without this. So I think it's a vital thing to have in this day and age are actually some cordless drills. And then of course you cannot do any kind of woodwork, and I mean I can work in metal after a fashion. I enjoy doing a bit of metal work, but I prefer wood. So you can't. There are a variety of things you need to have. This is a skill saw, so it's a handheld skill saw. And the way I work with saws like this and with the bench saw is using jigs. As a blind person, people often freak out by the idea of using power tools, scary bladed power tools. But if you're careful and you've got half a brain, there's no reason in the world why you should hurt yourself. No reason in the world. So I've got a skill saw, then I've got a variety of sanding equipment. I have a belt sander, which is important when you're going with the grain. And I've got a jigsaw, and I've got an orbital sander, and so I have enough tools to be able to be really quite practical and quite useful with. Another very important thing you need when you're working in the workshop are clamps. I have some older G clamps, but now with the advent of time, pistol grip clamps are all the rage. I wasn't convinced that they were strong enough initially until I bought one, and then I realized actually how wonderful it is to be able to just simply use the pistol grip and to clamp things shut. And so I need to get more of these. I've got another longer one, and I've got a bunch of longer clamps. They're over 1 meter long, which means you can actually make furniture. You can actually make bigger things. And so, yeah, I mean, I've made tables and benches and a bed for my wife's practice, a chess set. Many of the bookshelves in the house are made by me. So the house is littered with things.